Yesterday I saw a report released by the Productivity Commissioner about recommendations for the Sydney nighttime economy and how to rejuvenate it after what was pointed out as the lockouts being the main contributor to Sydney's nighttime economy demise. And I myself am someone who's been involved with this industry for a long time. First of all, as a promoter. I was one of Sydney's top promoters back in the day when Sydney was considered one of the top nighttime economies in the world. It was competing with the best of them. I used to go to clubs in New York and London and Paris and compare what we were doing back here, and we were easily on a par with them. So back in about 2009, I could see the lockouts were coming, and as luck would have it, I just had stumbled upon what was a solution, which is this business that I ended up developing called 3 Cheers, which everyone who does it loves it and gets a lot out of it. But the problem is that the people in charge are listening to the wrong people in the industry. They're not broadening the people that they speak to enough. The only people that were ever on the committees were these big pub groups. Those pub groups, they've got a place, but they're not the be-all and end-all of Sydney. They're just part of the picture. Really, back in the day when Sydney was really pumping, and the areas like Darlinghurst, Paddington, King's Cross was the main heart of Sydney's nighttime culture. All the venues there that were the leading venues were all independently owned. So independent venues are really important to the equation. And when you're talking to these big pub groups, they're just being listened to because they make the most money, which is not the right way to gauge things. So people in that world, people in the government, all that sort of thing, hadn't heard of me as being a promoter or anything like that. And that's by design. That's because the only way we used to promote was by word of mouth and by approaching the precise people that we wanted to come to the nights we were putting on. So really, I came along with a solution 15 years ago, and it was broadly ignored, even when other venues and groups got involved with it and still gave testimonials about it. It was still ignored. So to understand Sydney's nightlife, you have to understand Sydney. And Sydney is obviously made up of a lot of different areas, but the main area for where people like the real shakers and movers, the most influential people, where the majority of those people live, are in the Eastern Suburbs, which is essentially the seat of Wentworth. And that was the crowd that we used to get most of the people we used to put on the nights for would come from that area. But because it was on the edge of Wentworth, being the Cross and Darlinghurst and so forth, it's easy for people in the Eastern Suburbs to get to, but then it's also easy for other parts of the city to get to. So what I found was that with the people in the Eastern Suburbs as a promoter, you'd find that people wouldn't really go out further than, Taylor Square, Oxford Street. Really, Hyde Park was the limit of how far people would go out from the Eastern Suburbs. You got to have a place where Eastern Suburbs can get together, where it's easy for them to get to. Then that is the heart of the Sydney culture. From there, other things happen in satellite areas from there. But you need a heart, you need a beating heart, and that's what the Cross and Oxford Street was. But obviously that has been decimated. The Cross isn't what it used to be. And so what's the solution? Well, the solution that I think is really there for the taking is to develop a special entertainment precinct over in the Eastern Suburbs. And where I think that should be is taking in the entertainment quarter, but then also across the road, across Driver Avenue to the paddock across the road. And that's actually where I'm parked at the moment. I'm sitting where this paddock is. And what I think should be done is that this area should be developed into an art precinct. Maybe use the working title of wattle, as in the flower, but also what'll it be? And do something really special here. Get architects involved, have the ground levels of all the buildings that are built here not too tall, because one of the things about going out at night is that it's nice to see the sky. That's one of the problems with going out in the city in skyscrapers, is you can't see the sky, and it's not as nice as being in an area where you can see the stars and all that sort of stuff. You build buildings here not too tall. Ground floor, you make bars, you do clubs, you do cafes, you do galleries, make it into an arts district, build apartments above those, perhaps make them rent controlled so that we can support artists, artistic community live here, different things like that, have an artist in residence, all that sort of thing. And you can really create a really great artistic hub, which is where most culture comes from, is from the artists. And I think this would just be an excellent opportunity to do something really special. Of course, it's kicking it down the road a little bit by, maybe you could get this done within 5 years, do something really great. But by then, you'll have something super special, and the mistakes of the past can be rectified with something really amazing. So there's obviously more to the idea than that, and need to be thought out and put in the right hands, of course, of someone who knows what they're doing. So the great thing about this area as well is that it's near all these artistic facilities, like AFTRS is in the entertainment quarter, where all the people studying film are and all that sort of thing. The studios are here. I don't know what they're called now, if they're called Fox still, but all the creatives are here doing movies and whatnot. COFA's just over behind me, the College of Fine Arts. It's really just a great spot in a position which brings excellent areas together. There's a light rail which just pulls up just over there, which you can see there over there. And so it's really ripe for the taking to develop this area and make it into something really special and something that Sydney can be proud of. And from doing something right like this, then the other things will just flow. Sydney was fine before with just the Cross and Darlinghurst, Paddington, also down into the Rocks. Sydney was fine with that working before. That was enough to make Sydney what it was. And from there, just satellite venues did their own thing, warehouse parties happening in different areas. All of that stuff is already going on, but what's missing is something that caters to the Eastern Suburbs. The Eastern Suburbs is super important. You got to do something where the best people are, and that's just a reality that the Eastern Suburbs of Sydney, it's not just one of the most beautiful areas in Sydney or Australia, it's one of the most beautiful areas in the world, next to the harbour, the beaches, next to the city, the international city. It's why people want to live there. And that's why it's key to tap into, to reinvigorate and re-establish Sydney's nighttime, internationally renowned culture and vibrancy.